So if you haven't already read that book, put that on the reading list as the #1 priority. It's absolutely incredible. So as Ian was just saying, for instance, fundraising is incredibly hard. If you're focused every day on the operations of your business and you're trying to raise funds as well, it will be very taxing on you. And so this is a huge problem for a lot of early stage businesses. The reason that it's a problem is that not all tasks are valued equally. If you could work for an hour and be paid for every single hour you work at the correct rate, then there wouldn't be a problem. Because if you could bill yourself out $250 an hour and be paid reliably for every single hour that you had to work on your business, then you wouldn't need to do anything else. You would just save your money and then retire, a very happy person. But this is a more realistic view of someone's day in business. For the first 15 minutes, you're working on something where your time is actually worth what you're worth, right? $250 an hour. You then have to switch for 10 minutes to a $5 an hour job. And then for some arbitrary amount of time after that, you're doing something that's worth about $35 an hour. And worth here is determined by how much you can pay someone else to do it if you had that person there and then you had to do it. So this is the fundamental problem that all businesses face. That you have a founder whose day is split up into incredibly small amounts of time, each of which are valued differently. And so they're wasting a lot of their time doing not valuable tasks. Now, before I go on, I'm just going to sort of tell you why you should listen to me so everyone doesn't leave and fall asleep. It's pretty late in the day, so I have to get everyone's attention. If you were to look at me and say, that guy doesn't look like he has much money, you would be absolutely right. In fact, I am amongst the poorest 25% of incomes in the country. So I am, by all measures, very poor. But this is what's happened in my business over the past 2 years. In the 12-13 financial year, the number of man hours time-sheeted through my business is about 5,000. 33% of those were mine. Assuming 220 work days in a year, that's about 7.5 hours average per work day. Last financial year, 13-14, there was a total of 7,500 hours time-sheeted in my business. 17% of those are mine, and my work day was an average of 5.8 hours. So I've reduced my work day by about a fifth. I choose to spend that time with my family rather than running around trying to grow my business, which is probably why I don't have very much money. But this trend is continuing. And it's a result of what I'm going to outline here today. And what I'm going to talk about today is pretty high-level stuff. I run a business called The Procedure People, where I have started to do consulting on this stuff. This talk is based on a talk that I did recently to some Fishburners, which took 3 hours. So 1 hour of that was questions at the end. So I've kind of cut this down quite a bit. So if anyone, that's probably going to run for about, I don't know, hopefully about 30 minutes. And then if anyone has any questions at the end, just pipe up. So the core goal of systemization is to ensure that each person in your organization is always doing the most valuable work that they can. For most of you, each person in your organization is going to be you. And how can you possibly do that if you're only one person and you don't have much money? There's this stupid term called ramen profitability, which Paul Graham coined, one of his many stupid pieces of advice. But it just basically means unprofitable. And what it refers to is the fact that someone's business is making enough money to sustain them, but isn't making enough money to pay them market rates. So, for example, my business is ramen profitable. It supports me, it supports my family, but I'm very poor. I couldn't pay someone else to come and replace me in my business because that person would be too expensive. Anyone who had the breadth and depth of experience that I have, I could not possibly afford to hire as a salaried employee. So this is the first thing to look at. Like if you're a business and you are getting by or scraping by, but you're not growing and you couldn't afford to replace yourself, then you're not profitable. And the first thing to address is what's causing you not to be profitable. because you can't solve the problem of working all of these crappy hours and everything without addressing the core reason that you're having to do $5 an hour work or $35 work. So the systemization of a business and addressing the issue of profitability within a business isn't just a matter of writing down standard operating procedures. When most people think about systemization, they generally think that they're going to write down how to do their books each month, and that once someone else can do that for them, then their business is systemized. In fact, you need to have systems in place that find leads, close deals, set up clients, and fulfill services. And in order to do this, you probably need to simplify your business. So this is a really important concept, and it's one that without understanding this, you're probably going to have a hard time building a profitable business. But it's about figuring out what you sell and narrowing what you sell to the point that it can be considered a product, even if it's a service. So a lot of people, even if they have product businesses, have trouble focusing what they will do and who they will sell to in order to become profitable. So a good example is the CEO of Pipedrive. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Pipedrive. Anyone? Pipedrive? Yeah, got a couple. Pipedrive is a CRM system, which is a CRM is a tool for salespeople, and it's becoming more and more popular. He did an interview on Mixergy. If anyone isn't familiar with Mixergy, I also recommend that you consume Mixergy voraciously for the next 2 years. There's about 1,000 interviews with different entrepreneurs on there, so like 1,000 hours of content from incredibly successful people who you would have heard of. It's with a guy named Andrew Warner. So the website is Mixergy, mixergy.com. And the interviews are free for 7 days, and you can get full access to everything for $200 a year. The best $200 you'll spend in a year. Anyway, so the CEO of Pipedrive did an interview in which he talked about early on in the product development phase, they had a few offers from people who said, we would buy your service if you had such and such a feature, which is a very, very common problem for people in the early stages of the product business. Learning when to say no to new features, learning when to say no to deals, because even people who have well-defined products, even people who have SaaS products, the most productized service that there is, still get approached to make changes to that product or that service by people who are potential customers. And learning how to say no to those is a very important way of focusing the business so that you maintain profitability. So I recommend going and taking a look at that interview with the CEO of Pipedrive to help internalize some of the lessons around focus, even for product businesses. But if you're running a service business, does anyone here have what would be classed as a service business? Yeah, there will be a lot here. Yeah, back up there. So service businesses like accounting or whatever, or what I do, and I help people, I do some consulting stuff, I do some AdWords stuff, I do some software stuff. So those are really hard to productize because you have a huge range of things that you can do and very narrow things which are going to be profitable, that you can do profitably and scalably. So in order to create a truly systemized business, in order to get to the point where you have systems to find leads, close deals, set up clients, and fulfill those services, you probably need to start by simplifying your business. So people say to me all the time, oh, my business is too complex to simplify, to systemize, and the answer is, of course, simplify your business to the point that you can systemize it. Yeah, that's kind of an axiom. So the trouble with doing this is, of course, the same problem that Ian hammered home about raising funds, is that you have to have the time to systemize your business in order to make the time to systemize the business. If you're already swamped, if you're doing a lot of work, then it can be incredibly hard to detach and work on the business. Not only that, but if you imagine that each of these jobs could be done by a different person, then there might be 10 roles that you as the founder are fulfilling each day. So if you wanted to go and hire 10 people, all specialists in their field who can do it as well as you can, remembering that you are probably more committed and more talented than most of the people you're going to hire, you couldn't afford to do it. You would have to have a team of 10 to replace yourself, even though you can't afford it even yourself at market rates. So it's a very difficult situation to be in. There's obviously a lot of discussion about outsourcing. People have a lot of success with outsourcing, but outsourcing things that you do, as opposed to things that services or skills that you don't have or that are easy to buy, can be much more challenging to do overseas. For instance, giving people access to your bank accounts who aren't in your country can be a little bit daunting because you can't go to their house if they rob you or call the police or whatever it happens to be. So the number one, this is the sort of what I wanted to present here today is a really base level way that almost everyone in this room could get started based on my own experience of doing this in the position of having no money and no time. Don't use interns to solve this problem for you. Instead, find one thing that will save you 30 minutes a day. So for a lot of people, that's going to be something like invoicing. For other people, it's going to be things like customer service or tier 1 customer service. I know that we all get frustrated by multi-tier customer service when we call our phone companies, but the reason that they do it is because it saves them a hell of a lot of money and makes them profitable. So you have to choose between maybe pissing off a couple of customers and going out of business. So find just anything that you can do to save you just 30 minutes a day. Normally, if someone looks at their day and they see all of these different things, it's very overwhelming to figure out where to start because your day is broken up into all of these tiny little chunks. And usually you get to the end of the day and you kind of don't even know what happened. So it can seem insignificant to find something that will save you 30 minutes a day because you think, well, I'm working a 12 or 13-hour day. That's a drop in the ocean, it won't even make a difference. But it will. Go to hiremanmum.com.au, post a job that states hourly pay, work from anywhere, and choose your own hours. So this thing needs to be something that's not like graphic design or programming or a skill that you hire professionals to do. It needs to be something that anyone who can use a computer can do as long as you can write it out. And when you do it, the next time you do it, just write it out. Like, don't even pay attention to how good you write it out, to whether or not someone will be able to follow it. Just dump your brain onto a page as quickly as you possibly can. Go and hire someone. Make sure that in the headline you put this: hourly pay, work from anywhere, choose your own hours. Hire My Mum is an incredible website for getting stay-at-home mums to do work. Most of them don't want to work more than 5 to 10 hours a week. So you don't have to hire a full-time person to come in. You don't need 10 full-time people. You can hire 3 or 4 people to do a bunch of disparate tasks, each of them only working 5 to 10 hours a week. But most of the jobs on that website are like commission-only sales or business opportunities, like Amway and all that kind of stuff. So if you put in the headline that this is paid by the hour, that you can work from anywhere and that you can choose your own hours, you'll get a huge amount of applicants from which you can pick the best ones. And put the hourly rate in there. I started at 20 most of the time. A couple of times I was looking for a writer and I had to put it up to 25 an hour instead of 20. But you just play around with it. It's an inexpensive way to test out recruitment and hiring if you're not used to it, and an excellent way to get started. Now, the other thing that's going to really put you off hiring, especially hiring someone locally, is the amount of red tape around hiring people. I know for me it was a huge mental barrier, even though probably all the information is out there. You can go to the ATO website and learn how to hire someone. You can download the forms, tell you how to do it, the business center, all that kind of stuff. It is a huge headache, especially if you're already staffed for time. So what you do is you hire someone and then ask them as their first task to take care of all of the red tape for hiring. And it means that you don't have to do anything. You transfer some money into their bank account. I'm sure that there's like a little overlap there where you're not supposed to be paying them, but whatever. And they fill out all the forms, they send it to you, you sign some stuff, and they lodge the employment declaration and do all of that stuff. They read all the documentation, they call up the ATO, they find out all the red tape, work cover, super, tax deductible, all of that kind of stuff, right? They sort it out, you don't have to. Anyone with half a brain can figure this stuff out. But you have to have the time. And when you're already trying to figure out what it is that you should focus on, that little sliver in the middle that Ian talked about in that final slide, that is never one of the things. Bureaucratic red tape around hiring people is never one of the things that you think, okay, I should focus on that. So don't. Pay someone else to do it. Give them 2.5, 5 hours work a week. It'll cost you like $50 something a week. If you're working 13 hours a day and you can't afford $50 a week, then you should close your business and go on the dole. My accountant gave me that advice in 2010, and I should have listened to it. I didn't, and now I'm classed as one of Australia's working poor. But you can afford this. And I know everyone's like really tight about money and they're scared about money. You can't afford not to get some stuff off your plate. You have to do it eventually. And $50 a week, $100 a week, whatever, is a very valuable investment of your time, of your money. If you can't afford that, like really, and you're already working too much, you need to seriously think about the situation of your business and whether you should take some time to work for someone else, save up a bit of money, maybe be in a different industry, charge more, get rid of some clients, whatever it happens to be. So if you can't afford to do this, like this really basic little thing, then that's a really strong indicator that something's wrong in your business. So this whole process should take you about an hour. When they send you the emails, you get a whole lot of applications. Write back to them with a question. The question that I ask potential recruits for non-technical roles, so just roles that basically anyone who can use computers should be able to do, is how do you manage your email? The quality of their response to that question is a very strong indicator of how well organized they are. People write back with things like, oh, I just have my email on my phone, so I get it all the time. That's not a very good response. People who talk about, their system for labeling, filtering, times of response, prioritization, that kind of thing, always being inbox 0. Those are the people that you're interested in. So out of all the applicants who apply to that question, you get a bunch of replies back. Most of them will be rubbish. You'll end up with maybe 3 or 4 people that look pretty promising. Reply to them with the thing that you wrote out. Remove passwords and stuff for now. Don't be too liberal with your personal information. So you just give them that, this big, vague brain dump. Tell them that you do not expect them to understand how to do this or to know the answers. But it's their job to pick through the wreckage, ask the questions, and demonstrate somehow, either by putting it into a better document with improved formatting, or by, if you can get them to do something. For instance, one of the first things I ever hired for was managing AdWords accounts. So I had them set up their own AdWords account, read an ebook that I wrote about AdWords, and demonstrate that they were able to read through that and set up the account and manage the campaign. In doing that, when they ask you things like, can we jump on Skype to chat about this? I'm confused. That's a huge red flag, and you do not want to hire that person. If they say, I got up to point X, I didn't understand what you meant by Y, I went ahead and did Z anyway, but let me know if that's incorrect. That's the ideal response. Someone who is capable of reading through a bunch of instructions, decoding your shitty writing, figuring out what it is you really meant, and then coming up with reasonable questions. That's the skill that you want to hire for. And generally, 1 or 2 out of the 3 or 4 people that replied with a coded response to your email question will be suitable on those grounds, and then you hire them. So that will get you, but that will buy you 30 minutes a day, which doesn't sound like very much. But I think I've just been through this. So make it clear they're not expected to know all the answers. It's very important to specify that when you send to them, because otherwise people have a tendency to sort of think that you are assuming that they already know something, when what you are really saying is, I want you to try and understand this as best you can and then ask me good questions. Use a time-boxed trial task. So when you send someone, I pay everyone for the work that they do, so I never have someone do a free trial because I don't know, fundamentally disagree with it, but I also think you're not going to get their best work. The upshot of that is that I don't ask people for an outcome, I ask them to spend X number of hours on something. So spend up to 3 hours going through this thing and setting up this thing. And that also gives you a comparison of effectiveness, efficiency between two people. If one person finishes the entire thing in 3 hours, and then the other 3 didn't, you know that it's not a problem with your task, it's a problem with those people. If everyone didn't finish, then blah, blah, blah. If you give someone a task that says everyone has to complete this thing, then it's you're not really getting a good comparison of how efficiently each of those people work compared to each other. So time box the trial task. I recommend paying for it. You don't have to, I guess. Focus on the quality of the questions they ask and the ability to work and learn independently. Now, the other thing is hire early and hire often. I mentioned at the start of this talk a book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber and his term delegation through application. If you happen to get the most incredible person in the world, which some people do, and everything goes incredibly smoothly, then you can be lulled into a false sense of security, really depend on that person, and then when they leave, you're completely screwed all over again. Only this time, you're doing more work, so you can't actually handle it by yourself. So, in order to guard against this, hire someone else as quickly as you possibly can to replace them. Now, it's not like you're not going to fire them, but you get them, you want to keep progressively systemizing more and more of your business. You have a spare 30 minutes a day now, which means that you can spend another hour hiring someone. So when you hire the second person, you don't train them. They get trained by the first person. And in that training, you improve the process that you initially wrote out, the big, hairy, stupid one that was full of typos and wasn't laid out correctly. And eventually, that gets put into a better format. And then the second person comes along, learns how to do it, and by that stage, you know that you have a really good process. A process that doesn't depend on either of those people. And it also doesn't depend on you. And at that point, you can hire someone, give them a document, and say, go and start working. And the other thing is when you're trying to figure out who to hire or what to hire for, split what you do up into roles. And think about roles as not job descriptions. They are sometimes job descriptions, but sometimes they're done by more than one person. Sometimes more than one person does more than one role, does the same role. So it's useful to identify the roles even that you are doing throughout your day, because then you can start to think, what role, what capacity was I working at that time? This can be, I don't know if you guys use time tracking software. I'm a total geek, so I use an IRC channel with a bot that I wrote on Basecamp. Not everyone will have access to that, but there are heaps of time tracking tools. Freckle is a good one that has a nifty little desktop client. If you track your own time, then you can, and you've freed up 30 minutes per day, then you can spend that 30 minutes reviewing your own time logs. And when you do, you can look at the time that you spend doing each thing, figure out which role that you were in when you're doing it, and name the roles. And then you can say, okay, I clearly need to hire a scheduling assistant. And I have a role called scheduling assistant. Their job is to manage the Basecamp content. And another role called social media publishing assistant. Their job is to publish stuff to WordPress and Twitter. A marketing assistant, their job is to manage AdWords. It's, so you have these roles, and once you have a name for them, once you're splitting it, once you're identifying where you're wasting your time, where you're spending your time valuably, then you get a clear path of who you need to hire next. So, for those of you who are saying it is not worth saving 30 minutes per day, even though it is, because 30 minutes a day is 2.5 hours a week. If you have an extra 2.5 hours a week, then you could certainly do better, more work on your business. That's a significant amount of time. But even when you think that 30 minutes isn't worthwhile, as I said, the first thing I outsourced was AdWords management, which was clear I was spending a lot of my time doing, about half of it every day. And so it was obvious that I had to outsource that. It was also very easy to outsource because I had a very well-defined system for doing it. I'd already written it into an ebook, and so that was very ready. I had this other part of my day, which was every morning I had to review the calendar in Basecamp. I don't know if anyone's used Basecamp or used Basecamp Classic. It's an absolute piece of shit. I don't recommend it, but I like the calendar in it. It's the only one that has a calendar that I like. Anyway, so I had this job every day that I had to go through and look at all the people in the calendar and see where they're up to. And I actually videoed myself doing this for a talk that I was going to give at Fishburners 2 years ago to a room of about 8 people, I think. That was on how I use Basecamp. And because it only took me 15 minutes to do, I never bothered outsourcing it. I never bothered getting it off my plate until like 1.5 years down the track. When I got rid of it, it actually saved me 1.5 hours every day. Because at any one time, there was something like between 10 and 15 people and between 10 and 15 projects that were in Basecamp. And so even though when I was filming myself doing this job, it only took me 15 minutes, because obviously I wasn't going to go and like do anything else while I was doing this video. But when I actually got rid of it off my plate, my entire morning opened up. And I figured out that what I've been doing is getting sidetracked by each project just a little bit. And when you get each person, each project, like looking at their time log and saying, oh yeah, maybe, I wonder if they're doing enough work or whatever, and then looking at their Odesk account and saying, oh, I wonder if he's ripping me off. And then looking at the project and seeing how it's going, and looking at the designs that just came in, and getting sidetracked. Now, if you have 15 projects and 15 people, you get sidetracked by 2 or 3 minutes for each one, that's a significant amount of time. So just because something seems as though it's not going to take a significant chunk out of your day, doesn't always mean that it won't. So don't feel as though finding that one thing, even if you can't find one 30-minute chunk, you can only find a 15-minute chunk of your day to get off your plate in the first instance, it's still worth doing, because it's the start of the path towards having a completely systemized business. And then as you start to do it more and more, it becomes easier. You get less resistance, less internal resistance, less inertia about hiring people, less inertia around passing tasks off. You stop being so afraid that you're going to go broke because you're outsourcing things. And it gives you a hell of a lot more time to focus on your business or your kids or whatever you want to do. So that's it. I tried to keep that really short. I think I did keep it really short. So it was like 30 minutes. If anyone has any questions specifically about challenges that they've had or challenges they think they might have in systemizing, that would be a good time. Yes. I haven't read any. There's one called Work the System by Sam Carpenter. It's pretty popular. I got all of the, there's another one called The Machine by Justin Rothmarsh, which isn't released yet. But all of the stuff that I got about systemization, I got from Mixergy. And so Justin Rothmarsh has an interview on Mixergy, and Sam Carpenter has an interview on Mixergy. So Mixergy is an incredible resource, has heaps of stuff on systemization. He got really obsessed with it for a little while. Andrew Warner, the guy who runs it, got really obsessed with systemization because he was working too much. And so he had a lot of people on to talk about it. Yeah, everywhere. My team is currently 17 people, and in 11 time zones. So I've got, So Australia, there's three people in Australia, Kenya, Pakistan, Latvia, I think 2 in Latvia, and then 1 in Romania. I don't know, there's a few people. There's Morocco. So is that Tunisia? Is in Morocco, right? Yeah. Anyway, there's a few more there that are more recent employees. I can't remember where they're from. What's that? Yes, I do. But see, so because Basecamp sucks so bad, I have a system for managing Basecamp, which I have 2 people do. So I have this job called scheduling assistant, which I pay two people in 2 different time zones. So 1 in the Philippines, 1 in Romania. Same Balkan, it's a Romanian name, isn't it? Okay. So 1 in the Philippines, 1 in Romania, opposing time zones. So they're in different shifts. Every hour they run a process called the Basecamp calendar review, which is you go into the calendar, you stuff about. If the milestone is done, there's a process attached to the to-do list that tells them how to hand it off onto the next person, which was a really hard thing to systemize, by the way. And one of the last things that I did outsource was the management of those things. Because getting it to the point where two people with different skill sets can be working in different time zones and not have to talk to each other, and then a third person who has neither of those skill sets can prepare to work and give it to someone else was very difficult, but very valuable, because that whole thing runs without my input. So I have those scheduling systems 24 hours a day, checking each hour, and then I pay them for a quarter of an hour every time they check, even if they don't do any work. So there's like a little bit of indirect overhead there. Most of it is direct overhead, but there's some indirect overhead there. But if anyone has a better idea, like I know I've tried Trello, I've tried Teamwork PM, and Basecamp, the new Basecamp, and everything. Nothing has the calendar thing that I need. But if anyone knows of a good calendar,
Did you have free camp?
free camp,
Free.
free camp.
It's like a free version of Facebook.
Okay, no, I'll write. I'm gonna write that.
Can you spell Mixergy?
Mixergy. It's the worst name. It is proof of how good his content is that it's so popular with a name like that, right? Because how could he have gotten popular? His content is amazing.
You talked about systems and outsourcing it. Coming from a corporate background, there's always like ERP or SAP or some kind of system. What's available to a small business to manage your HR? And accounting is easy because you got your SSU. But for young, HR or marketing. And
so you're talking about like formal business process management software? Yeah. I don't use formal business process management software. I use MediaWiki. I've tried Google Docs, and I've tried Backpack, which is by Basecamp guys. Horrible system. I'm glad that they ditched it. So I then arrived at MediaWiki. Now the thing is that there's no sort of automation in this yet. And automation is something I'll probably do manually. So for instance, the scheduling assistant role that I was just talking about, that's something that could very easily be automated if I had a spare $4,000 or $1,000 a month to pay programs to work on automating that with enough reliability that they don't stuff it up and derail the whole thing. For now, I just have to battle ahead with Basecamp. But so when it comes time to automate something, I have a really good description of what it should do, but it's just written out in MediaWiki. Now, people have said to me, how do you check that it's actually being done? You have to build that into the process. So I have a checklist system that uses Google Docs, and there's, for a couple of other roles, I have some reporting systems like the AdWords. There's a spreadsheet that the person can compile each time they do some campaign optimization. So those things are built into each process on an ad hoc basis to ensure that the processes are being run correctly. And it's just a tactical thing. You just figure out as you go along how to make sure that it's actually being run and also continually improving. So the reason that I use MediaWiki and the reason that I haven't gone down some sort of formal business process management path is, first of all, I don't know enough about it to know what business process management software I should buy. And I don't think that many small business owners would. The second is that I don't want my business processes stored somewhere that I don't own and that I can't back up onto a CD. So Google Docs, Dropbox, they're all the drive, everything is synced, and I can back it up. I have a hard drive that I rotate in 2 different locations because that's my most valuable business asset. And my business has grown to the point where I couldn't actually run it without the documentation. If the SaaS product was offline for 3 days, nothing would happen in my business for 3 days. So that's what, I know that there's like big enterprise VPN software and people rely on it, whatever, but I'm really paranoid about that. So MediaWiki is a great choice because it's self-hosted, it's a huge community, it's very easy to use once you get over the barrier. But I've had like non-technical people who learn how to use it, and I've had people following incredibly complex, long-winded procedures manually through MediaWiki using checklists to verify that it's done correctly. And this is systemizing software development. So it's systemizing custom software development. It's not systemizing, some people are like, I systemize my SEO. It's like, okay, that's not always as complicated. But so I would say that anything more than MediaWiki or anything more than written instructions, at least in the early days, until you're way more profitable, $5 million revenue, and you can afford a consultant to do that for you, is overkill. You should just focus on writing it down.
You know, smart sheets.
Smart sheets? No. Check it out though. Is it free software?
It's very minimal.
No, I mean open source. Free
It's based on Google Docs.
Google Docs, right? Yeah. So that's up.
It's more expensive.
Yeah, that's the most important thing for me, is being able to explore it. So the other reason I use MediaWiki is because it has this really good revision history. So you can get a visual diff if it changes between two versions and then email it to someone. They click the link and they see the same thing. And that's been very useful in getting my team to collaboratively maintain the documentation. Because we have a process for creating the processes. So that when people ask me questions and I answer the questions, all I have to say is, hey, can you update the documentation? And they know how to do it. So that's really important. So the MediaWiki can do that as well. I think those questions are back there.
That's good. Not related. How do you pay your overseas contract? That's a job in itself.
Yeah, Odesk, PayPal, and one by direct telegraphic transfer.
It's quite expensive.
I have $30. He invoices like once every 2 months, and then it costs me $30. But he only charges $12 an hour, so factored into the 100 hours, it's not very much money. Yes.
How do you manage?
Sorry, you're next. Sorry.
How do you manage the times that they are working overseas?
Do you mean how do I ensure that they're actually doing work?
Yes.
Because you can just tell. You'll know, especially if you're employing more than one person. You can tell when one person is delivering heaps of value in your business and another one is completely not, and then you fire them. It's incredibly obvious. I don't use the Odesk work diary because I don't want to waste my time reviewing people's work diary. I have better things to do. So it's incredibly obvious when you have so many people working for you. When one of them is making excuses all the time and not delivering the work and takes twice as long, you can tell immediately. And I don't think people who've never worked as a manager don't really understand this. It's really easy to tell when an employee sucks. You have to worry about it. Yes?
I just want to ask, when you say you only hire people who can take care of all the red tape and stuff,
Yeah.
doesn't mean I have my own baby yet?
No. So that's the whole point, is that in Australia, if you hire someone with an ABN and they invoice you, but you're their only source of revenue, you still have to withhold tax, you still have to pay their super, you still have to have a work permit. So essentially, if it is an employee relationship, regardless of the mechanism that it's being employed under, it's an employee relationship. So it's different if they have an ACN. So if they're invoicing from PTY Limited, you don't really need to worry. But if you can't just say to someone, oh, I'm going to hire you, and you have to get an ABN, you invoice me, and I don't have to worry about it. Which is why I don't bother with it, and I just get them to do it. So I hired them. I said, I'm a sole contractor, so I don't even have a company. And I can employ people. Anyone can employ someone. You just have to fill out an employment declaration and mail it in and get some work cover and figure out how much to withhold each time you pay them. And then you owe the tax department that money, so they spend it. And then you have to pay them some super every quarter or something like that. But which I don't deal with because I didn't even set it up. But I'm assured by my accountant that it's all being done. So that's why I get the person who I hire to worry about all of that. And then because what's that?
How about the overseas people?
Overseas, oh well, you don't need to worry about it for overseas people because they're in completely different jurisdictions. If someone in Pakistan sends me an invoice and I pay it, I don't have to pay in super or withhold tax. Like, that's in Pakistan, you can worry about that. and through Odesk, you just pay through Odesk. And yeah, so whatever. People overseas send you an invoice, you just pay it, doesn't matter. But in Australia, that's the only headache. Which is the thing. Like if you're outsourcing overseas, this is the conundrum that I came up against. That for about 2 years I was outsourcing things like graphic design and web development with no hassles. The final frontier for me was outsourcing more sensitive administrative tasks that I was doing because I wasn't comfortable sending them overseas right away. I wanted to be able to arrest someone if I wanted the bank account that I was paying someone to be in Australia, because then it's like the same legal jurisdiction. So that took me a really long time, and the biggest mental block was what do I have to do in order to employ someone? And once I realized that I could just pay the person who I was hiring to figure all that out, it was a huge weight off my shoulders. And I think like the next day, I had hired someone.
One more question.
Yes.
How about you say you hire someone to do writing for you or writer?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of IP, so is there a contract with the writer
Yeah.
to actually?
Yeah, I just searched Google for ghostwriter agreement and made a couple of tweaks. Yeah. So ghostwriter agreement. Ghostwriter. Yeah, so freelancing is different from ghostwriting. Freelancers traditionally retain their IP, but ghostwriters don't. So if you're going to sign an agreement with someone, don't make it a freelance writing agreement, because freelancers expect to be able to get attribution for their work. Ghostwriters, it's clear that they're not. Yes.
In terms of freelance,
I tried to use Freelancer once, and I tried to use Elance once, and they totally sucked. The reason that I tried to use them, so why did they suck? From memory, and it was quite a long time ago, very surprisingly, Elance bought Odesk, which I just totally don't get, because Elance sucks by comparison. But I didn't like the project-based nature of the way that you're hiring people in those things, because when I hire people, it's for ongoing work. I'm not generally hiring someone to do one thing, like a project or whatever. So anyway, I couldn't find the same number of applicants that I could on Odesk, and it wasn't as easy. Odesk, I don't really like Odesk either, but it's the best of a bad lot, and I get pretty good. The interface is incredibly clunky, and they could do a lot of things better, but there's a huge number of people on there that know, PHP and MySQL. The one thing that I can't hire on Odesk anymore is designers. Design's gotten incredibly expensive because it is the easiest thing to outsource. So the interface between a designer and a developer is a PSD document, and everyone knows how to work with PSD. So you just get a designer to produce a PSD document, they can talk to them that much, and then it's done. It doesn't require any maintenance work. You're generally dealing with a skilled professional who you can't manage anyway. So because design is so easily outsourced, you're competing against cash-up American startups or all that VC funding, and design in the US is really, really expensive. So you can't get really good designers on Odesk anymore for less than like $40 or $45. And even if you do, then it's only a matter of time before they go on their own anyway. So you have to keep reforming those relationships. So for designers, I hire on a Latvian site called zip.lv and a Spanish site called Domestica, D-O-M-E-S-T-I-K-A. And I've been able to get some pretty good Spanish designers for around 20-25 euros. And Latvian around $20 US is reasonable. But Odesk, I couldn't. Last time I tried to hire a designer on Odesk, it was a disaster.
Just
yes.
Just very on freelance.
Yeah.
It's interesting. What's the product and what makes them so? Because they really they find the others.
Freelancer, why are they so successful?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I've never met anyone who likes them, but they're tremendously successful.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't like Microsoft either. They're full of money.
Do you have any other alternative other than to just for freelancers for hiring tech?
So I hire PHP programmers, PHP MySQL, front-end JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. I've only ever hired on this. I've hired, I think, 20 in total over the past 4 years. I started at the really bottom of the ladder, $5 an hour. Don't hire people who are $5 an hour. Like they're not any good. They're $5 an hour for a reason. The mistake that I made, I was like, if you look at the average wage in Indonesia, and $5 an hour is heaps, so like they should be really, you're competing against the rest of the world. You're not competing against the Indonesian job market. You're not competing against the Romanian job market. You're competing against everyone else in the world and what they can afford to pay. So it's a pretty subtle realization about hiring people, I guess, is that the hourly rate that there is an hourly rate. It's sort of the most raw relationship between cost and quality that I've ever found. Up until that, like at the moment, it's always the advice is always time specific. So right now, try and get somewhere between $15 and $25 an hour with their back-end PHP type developers who know some Linux, and 30% front end. Any more than that, and they start to be a pain in the ass to work with. Either that, or they don't want to be managed. So if you are a non-technical person, then you're going to hire someone in Poland for $35 or $40 an hour. That's quite a good deal, because if they were in Australia, that would be worth more like $150. So it depends on why you're hiring and who you're hiring. But you don't want to go too cheap, but you don't, depending on the beginning, you don't want to go too expensive.
Give us your top 10, 15 minutes roles that you managed to. You didn't think you could, but you managed to share.
So, one day a month of bookkeeping. So doing my invoices for the month and marking supplier invoices, paying supplier invoices and stuff like that. So that was about a day a month. That document, when I wrote that out, when I followed my advice and wrote out from beginning to end, on a day that I had to do my invoicing, everything that I did, it was ridiculous. Like seriously, if you had a computer screen like this, it would go from floor to ceiling if you had it on a single screen. It was insane. And I just gave it to this woman who was like, hey, welcome to hell. There you go. And yeah, she did it. And the next step I said was, hey, instead of using this piece of shit accounting thing that I wrote myself when I was 25 and like doesn't work and has all these errors and all this stuff, can you put this in Xero instead? And she did that as well. So it took about 6 months. Up until that point, I had never done a bank reconciliation ever. After being in business for about 9 years. So my numbers were always like 18 months late. I knew once I got a tax bill whether I was profitable 18 months ago. And usually the answer was no. Not surprisingly. So, so I wrote out this big, stupid list of things to do. And you'd be surprised. You think in your mind, there's no way that anyone will be able to do this. But people can do it, if you hire the right people. And that selection procedure that I talked about, the ability to read through instructions and make sense of them, is incredibly strong indicator of how well they're going to be. So it's one of the things
If you hire somebody on Odesk, do you have to have a separate contract?
Anyways, by the way, everyone who's asking questions about Odesk and outsourcing, the next talk is about outsourcing. So stick around. Anyway, yes.
Do you need to have a separate contract with the person who's doing the work, or just the Odesk?
I like to have a little agreement. I don't know how legally binding it is. I guess that would be tested in court. But a little thing written out that you both signed states the understanding of IP attribution and stuff like that. It's not created by a lawyer. In fact, I wrote down law path. I was like, you know what, I should really have a better legal contract than that. But I think Odesk has something in their terms and conditions as well. But yeah, talk to the lawyer. I'm not a good one for legal advice. Okay. Is there anything else? I get the sense we're ready for a break. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Everyone stick around for Cat's talk after the break on outsourcing and Odesk and stuff. It's really good.
And just in case you have more questions, as Ian said, he basically took a 3-hour lecture into a half-an-hour lecture. So if he's hanging around, if you've got some more questions, feel free to ask him. We're just doing a 15-minute break, really short, and then we'll get back into it. We've got Katrina and the same